Hey there, my wedding planning friends, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for clicking on my video. I'm Emily Summer. I'm a wedding planner based in Montana, and I make weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice. So today's video, we're talking all about first looks at your wedding and basically all of the who, what, when, where, and why about wedding first looks. So if you've been doing any type of wedding planning, research, inspiration building, you've probably seen the term of a first look before, but we're gonna break down everything that you need to know about first looks, what exactly they are, when they take place, where, and all the good stuff. So let's start with who. So the first look is done by the couple that is getting married. So you and your partner will have a private first look before the wedding ceremony takes place so that you are seeing each other prior to the wedding ceremony. There are also first looks for father-daughters, brides with their siblings, with their brothers, bride with the bridesmaids. I haven't really seen a groom do a whole lot of first looks. They just tend to not be as sentimental about those types of things, but there are other types of first looks you can do outside of just a bride and groom or a couple first look. For the sake of today's video, we are focusing primarily on just that couple first look. So when does this take place? Like I mentioned earlier, the first look will happen prior to your wedding ceremony. So traditionally, the first time the groom will see the bride is when walking down the aisle. First looks started, I actually don't know when first looks really became, like when the first look happened. But in the entire time that I have been a wedding planner, first looks have been a thing, and they've become even more popular over the last 10 years. So now this is something that occurs prior to the ceremony so that the bride and groom or the couple have a separate intimate time before the wedding ceremony. So usually, as far as timing goes, there are a lot of factors that can go into this that will change it slightly. My rule of thumb, at least for a starting point, is typically 2 hours prior to your ceremony start time. This will change if you plan to have your first look in a different location than where your wedding ceremony will take place. That will require any type of travel time. You'll want to make sure that you're giving yourself a little bit more time leading up to your wedding ceremony. And also, some couples will choose to do private vows during their first look. So if this is something that you are wanting to do, you will want to give yourself a little bit more time for that as well so that you are not feeling rushed. You have the photos of the initial first look, but then you also have photo documentation and being able to take your time when reading those vows to each other as well. So if that's anything that you're planning on doing, add a little bit more time in addition to that 2 hours prior to your wedding ceremony start time. Essentially, you want to make sure that it is early enough that you have time to get through all those photos, have a nice non-rushed moment together, and not be worried about your guests showing up or being distracted by other things that have to happen, or guest arrivals or family arriving, but also late enough that you are able to have all of your hair and makeup done and you are not being rushed in that getting ready process as well. So let's move into where does this take place? Like I mentioned, most of the time the first look will happen wherever you are planning on getting married, wherever your wedding ceremony is going to be. And this is what I would highly suggest if that is available to you. If there is a location on site wherever you are going to be getting married, that is the best place to do your first look. That way you don't have to worry about travel time, you don't have to feel rushed, and you can just kind of move from one thing to the next. But you can do your first look essentially wherever you want. So things that you want to be considering when it comes to the location is you want it to be somewhere that is somewhat scenic, somewhere that you have a good aesthetic backdrop or a non-distracting backdrop, because while this moment is for both of you in the moment, it's also going to be documented, and you want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for a good location for those photos as well. You also want to make sure it's a somewhat secluded or private location so that you're able to have this moment without any distractions, without a bunch of people looking on and watching. You want this to be as intimate as possible between just the two of you and then your photographer who will be documenting. It's also a good idea to consider lighting, and your photographer will likely take over this decision making if there's some decisions that have to be made regarding location and lighting. But keep that in the back of your mind if you're thinking about potential locations or debating between a couple. You want to make sure that you're going to have decent lighting for this too, for the sake of your photos, and just so that you're not in a place that's going to be sweltering hot or sun right in your eyes, not only for the photos, but for your own comfort as well. And the why. So if you've been watching my channel for any amount of time, you've probably heard me say this before, but I am a huge proponent of first looks for a variety of reasons. But the biggest pros that come from having a first look are the amount of time that it kind of frees up in your leading up to your ceremony. When you do a first look, you are kind of getting that seclusion out of the way. So if you are seeing each other prior to the wedding ceremony, then you don't have to be secluded all the way up leading up to your wedding ceremony. This allows time for other bridal party photos. You can get a lot of your wedding party pictures done before the ceremony, and that frees up time later, so that once your ceremony is over, you're not having to spend quite as much time doing photos and being pulled away from your friends and family that are there to celebrate with you during your cocktail hour and just during your reception and any time after the ceremony. Another great benefit is it tends to ease the nerves a little bit. So it's your wedding day. There's obviously going to be some excitement, some nervous energy, some nerves, and that's not going to go away completely, but it does help to ease that a little bit if you are able to have this moment with each other, and then you can kind of be with each other leading up to your wedding ceremony, and that can relieve a little bit of that nervousness. If that is something you anticipate happening on your wedding day, having any sort of anxious energy or being really nervous about being up in front of a bunch of people, kind of having that moment together will take a little bit of the edge off and a little bit of that kind of overall stress surrounding your wedding ceremony. Additionally, I think that you get the most authentic reactions with the first look. Obviously, there's something so strong and powerful about seeing the reaction of your partner at the end of the aisle when you are walking down for the first time. However, that is still going to be a separate moment, and it's going to elicit its own separate emotions. So it might be different, obviously, than if that were the first time you're seeing each other, than if you do have a first look. But it's not like doing a first look is going to completely take away that excitement and that emotion, because that is still the moment that you are walking down the aisle to marry your lifelong partner. So that does not take away from that. And what I have seen is, this obviously varies among different people and different partners, but sometimes the grooms especially will kind of hold back their emotion a little bit when they are at the end of the aisle, because they know all eyes are on them, cameras are on them, and they tend to hold back a little bit more when you are walking down the aisle as far as emotion goes. And when it's a first look, it's just a very private, intimate moment, and you can get a lot of really authentic and genuine reaction from that. And finally, it's just a great moment to be able to share between the two of you. It's kind of ironic that this is your wedding day and you're celebrating the union of you two for your life, but you actually don't spend that much time with each other on your wedding day. There's so many things that are happening, so many directions you're being pulled in, so many people to talk to, all the photos that are happening, that this is a very special moment that you are able to have just the two of you and be able to kind of soak in the day a little bit prior to kind of the craziness that's going to happen following. So if that's something that is important to you on your wedding days, being able to share in some private moments together, a first look is a great opportunity for that. So there you have it. If you are unsure of what a first look is, or if you're maybe on the fence about whether you should do one or not, hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe to get weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice, and we'll see you next week.